Hello and welcome to Homescreen, the show brought to you by 11FS Pulse, a platform with over 5,000 user journeys from banks and fintechs from all over the world. So head over to pulse.11fs.com to check it out. As you can see today, I'm joined by my co-hosts Ali MacManus and Aga Oakes. First-time guest, of course. How are you doing today?
Very good, thank you. Very excited to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. And how about you?
Tremendous. Always happy to be here, Coach.
That's great. So, without further ado, we're going to talk about crypto wallets, but for novices. But before we do that, here's a little bit of context. Bitcoin, the first blockchain-supported cryptocurrency, dates back to 2008. However, it took a good few years before crypto markets began to develop. Not least because, in order to get involved, you had to be tech-savvy and risk navigating highly complex platforms and protocols. However, as the concept of cryptocurrency ascended into a global phenomenon, crypto wallets and exchanges became increasingly popular as they adopted a more user-friendly and centralized approach. Whilst this opened the gates for a whole new cohort of users, it also exposed them to the risky and volatile nature of these assets. With a turbulent, headline-ridden, boom and bust history, the hazards surrounding crypto and crypto products should not be ignored. Speaking in the midst of a severe crypto crash, this will be acutely relevant to many stakeholders now. Yet crypto apps and platforms, whether they're built for beginners or experts, are here to stay. And in this episode, we're going to focus on designing crypto for novice users, exploring the best design practices for buying, holding, and selling crypto. So, Ali, when we're introducing crypto to novices, how do we go about doing that?
For me, if they're complete novices, then we need to look at it through the eyes of somebody who's never done it before, and therefore all the terminology is unfamiliar, and they're going to need quite a bit of hand-holding. It's a complex space. There's a lot of terminology, a lot of things that can be needlessly confusing, and just any really good onboarding process, you kind of hold their hand through. You say, we're going to ask you for this. This is why.
Right.
And it just allow them, educate them as you go, get them in nice and softly, make sure they feel prepared to do what they're about to do before they do anything else.
Okay, great. Aga, how do we go about getting that balance right where we're not overwhelming the user with information, but also keeping them educated?
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good question, Joe. So the key point here in designing this experience is not to overwhelm the user. So we don't want to present all of the information at once and throw it at our poor user who is actually the first-time user.
Right.
So ideally what we want to do is to progressively disclose this information in a way of, here's one bit you can learn today. And we know that crypto is not, it's in its infancy, so it's not an industry that is very well developed just yet. And that's why we might have questions about trust. Do our users trust this industry? So a very good thing, as Ali pointed out, would be hand-holding, just keeping the users informed at all times, and then having the useful tips or even nudges on demand for the user.
Okay, great. Well, why don't we just take a quick look at how we go about designing that then? Okay, great. So we're onboarded now. Aga, how do we go about buying crypto now? What are the best practices there?
So if we keep in mind that it's the first-time user, and we want to make sure that UX is seamless. So we want to make sure that before even the user buys crypto, there's a lot of choice out there. So this might be a bit overwhelming, which coins to buy, which are worth looking into. So we want to make sure we're presenting all of the information to our user in terms of what is the coin? Is it the meme coin, for example? Where was the technology underlying it? What are all the stats about the coin, for example, a market cap? And at the beginning, it will be a bit overwhelming. So we would like to ideally teach the user what these terms mean as well. And then once our user is ready to buy, we want to make sure we are very, very transparent about it as well, about the process.
Okay, and that includes the fees as well. I imagine it's not just the the white paper and what's behind it, but really the costs of it as well.
I think it goes beyond that as well. I think in order to make a decision that really feels like it's informed, you can't, as a platform, if you're designing for a platform or a marketplace, push any particular crypto. It needs to be an objective decision made on behalf of the user that is also educated at that point when they make the point. So I think Coinbase do it, and it's probably pretty poor form on their basis, but they have featured cryptos when it comes to things, and to me that just seems like it's pushing specific coins, not being objective. It's not allowing the user to make their own informed decision. It's kind of elevating things a little bit.
Yeah, which we've got to be very careful of. I did notice that on Coinbase where they have one at the top, and it's certainly the first thing you see. It might just be recently added, but if there's some hype around it in the press, you can be tempted to go through with that rather than kind of searching for it yourself.
Yeah, there are ways to bring that objectiveness in front of the user as well. Like Aga mentioned, meme coins, and a lot of these can be incredibly speculative with no real value. And you can surface that. You can say they doesn't have a specific purpose or white paper, or this might be a meme coin, you got to be careful. We put these little things in place when it comes to just transferring each other money now. So buying things in such a volatile market, I think those things need to be put in place too.
Absolutely. And that makes a lot of sense. Well, why don't we take a quick look at how we go about doing that then? Okay, great. So now we've got our crypto. What do you think the best ways are to go about holding on to it?
Yeah, so if we look into it, we've got the first-time user, and they need to see how much they've got, right? So they need to see the balance. They need to see how it's changing, whether it's gained, whether it's lost in value. And not all the apps actually do it correctly. So for example, I've got one of these apps. I'm not going to name names, but I've got one of them, and I can see how much balance I've got. So maybe at the beginning of the month, I've had £2,000, let's say, and then at the end of the month, I've had £2,500, and then there is a £500 difference. But is it because my crypto has appreciated in value, or is it because I just bought more? And that's why I've got more. So I think we need some smarter insights here, sort of like Snoop does for fintech.
Yeah, I've seen that before actually, where they don't distinguish between the rising price or lowering price and when you bought or sold. So it's very hard to tell your actual gains or losses from that. That makes a lot of sense. Kind of building on that, what do you think the best approaches to data visualization are here?
Well, I think as Aga said, it's around the context. Like, why has something happened? If we're using data visualization as a storytelling device in this case, which we often are, then providing the context around why something has fluctuated or risen in value is really important. I'll use an example of an investment app that I use for my ISAs. They allow sort of events that have happened on the graph to show. So, for example, there was a marker when the war in Ukraine started. Right. And that then had insights into this and all gave a lot of context as to why my investments were performing as they were. Yeah. And I think something like that for crypto would be incredibly transparent, and also it would help differentiate against which had a little bit more stability and basis and which ones perhaps weren't as valid and a bit more speculative.
Right, yeah, that makes sense. And then also I think adding that kind of level of flexibility, letting users decide what time frame they want to see it, not just the most appealing one based on holding on to it, which we do unfortunately sometimes see. Where you'll see it in the most attractive time frame, but yeah, just offering that flexibility, I suppose, is key, and something that's obviously shared with a lot of investment apps as well. But perhaps even more important here, given the kind of volatile nature of it. Well, great. Now let's have a quick look at how we do that. We've got our crypto now, and we're ready to sell it. The moment's come. We've looked at all the graphs and the information out there. Hopefully, that's very well provided and well surfaced. How do we go about selling that, and what are the best design best practices to enable them to do that?
I think there's a difference between wanting to trade what you have for something else, or whether or not you actually want to cash in your currency. I think a lot of the experience just now are quite unclear and don't hold the user's hand through as much, and they often end up, converting to GBP and then going and buying something else immediately, which means they get burnt twice.
Right.
And there's nothing to stop you doing that, or to know that that's not the right way to do it, rather than just trading. When you think about it like a currency exchange as well, which of course it is in essence, you need to be a bit more transparent as well about what hidden fees are there, and actually that money that you have minus the fees is not going to be the money that ends up coming back to you.
Right. Yeah. And this is obviously one of the areas where people do feel the sting of that kind of middleman, the severity of kind of not being actually centralized and having someone else play. Of course, it makes the user experience better. But yeah, that's a good point, because that's where a lot of these charges are felt, when you've got these intermediaries that act between the user and the protocol. Yes, they take away a lot of complexity, but a lot of quite hefty fees are felt here. And transparency is one thing, to obviously let the user know what they're being charged, of course. But also, I think a thing that could be done a lot better is actually explain why. These can often be up to sort of 10%, if not more.
100%.
And if you're getting burnt on buying and selling, you'd like to know a little bit about why.
And the margins are fine at the minute. If you're cashing out because you think you're in a position of strength, and then the fees get added on, and all of a sudden you've actually made a loss.
Yeah.
That can definitely be communicated and be more transparent.
Yeah. And I think it must be that thing again of building up trust between you and the user.
Absolutely.
With a bad selling experience or buying experience, you might go away and think, oh, I thought I was going to make money from this. My coin happened to go up, but I actually got pretty skimmed. So yeah, it's certainly a point of I think contention amongst novice users who are quite shocked at what they've been introduced as a kind of fairer, decentralized platform actually is anything but, and they feel it there.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, let's take a good look at how we design that then. Whilst we've covered some of the key design best practices of buying, selling, and holding crypto, a key thing to always have in mind is that cryptocurrencies can, of course, be very high-risk assets. So please incorporate this caution across all aspects of your design, and be on the user side throughout, really. Similarly, to those new users, we suggest you do a lot of research before investing, and are well aware of the risks that are on offer. But Thank you so much both today for joining us. That was very informative in a new and interesting area, and one that's kind of forever changing. But thanks for joining us today as the audience as well. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you want to see more journeys like these, head over to pulse.11fs.com. And if you're not already signed up, you can get started on a free demo. Likewise, for those interested in an easy to digest, simple dive into Web3, we'd really recommend you check out the 11FS Web3 report. And thank you all, and catch you all next time.